الحمد لله خالق الوجود من العدم وجاعل النور من الظلم فمخرج الصبر من الألم وملقي التوبة على الندم فنشكره على المصائب كما نشكره على النعم ونصلي على رسوله الأكرم ذي الشرف الأشم والنور الأتم والكتاب المحكم وكمال النبيين والخاتم سيد ولد آدم الذي بشر به عيسى بن مريم ودعا لبعثته إبراهيم عليه السلام حين كان يرفع قواعد بيت الله المحرم فصلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى أتباعه خير الأمم الذين بارك الله بهم كافة الناس العرب منهم والعجم. فالحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا، والحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض، والحمد لله الذي نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه، ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله الله تعالى بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا، فصلى الله عليه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها، وإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أقول أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله، اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. When we look at any study of history, world history, then historians record the changing of events and how a society transforms from economic points of view, social points of view, political points of view, military points of view. And from these lenses, they did describe which nation went to war against which nation, what were the reasons behind it, what trade agreements were there, how did those trade agreements collapse, which ethnicity was which against which other ethnicity, their rises and their falls. Essentially, they're looking at these larger events in history, these, you can call them macro events in history, and they're making comments about them. And that's what, when we study documents in world history, we're really looking at a political history with, social and economic and other kinds of forces at work. And all of that's extremely valuable. The study of history is actually an extremely valuable study. You can think of what the Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that this ummah is kajasad. It's like one body. You may have heard this before. The Prophet described the entire ummah of Islam as one body. And if it's like one body, then we're all like one person. The imagery of the hundreds of millions, billions of Muslims is like one single person. And imagine that a person wakes up one day and has no memory of what happened yesterday or the day before. They have no recollection of anything in their history, that personal history. If a person doesn't remember, if I don't remember anything from beyond the last 24 hours, then I would say that I have no sense of identity, right? My identity is tied to my own history. Where was I born? Who are my parents? What is my religion? All of that stuff. So in that analogy that the ummah is like a single body, part of the implications of that is if we don't know our own history, then we don't know ourselves. We don't know who we are. But the problem, the other side of that, is that looking at history, there's two ways of looking at it. You can tell me your history as in, let's talk about a single person. You could describe your history as, I was born in this place, then I went to school in this place. My parents did this job, and we had, we didn't have much money, or we came from this society, and then this happened in my life. You have a list of events in your life, opportunities in your life, the time you got married, when you had children, all of these things. That's your personal history. You can write a biography about yourself. But there's another kind of personal history. And the other kind of personal history is not from the point of view of the events, but from the point of view, how did Allah intervene in my life? What were the moments in my life that I know Allah did something for me, that I know it was from Allah? There were turning points in my life. This is your spiritual history, if you will, right? And even in your own personal biography, you cannot actually capture. You'll see that the spiritual dimension of your own history is completely missing. That is maybe if you're very intimate and close to somebody, right? If somebody just asks you about yourself, you're not going to tell them your spiritual history. You'll just tell them, hey, I went to college here, I lived there, etc., etc. But if you become very close to someone, and you have a very deep, intimate connection with someone, then you can describe the moments you knew Allah did something for you. The moments you knew a turning point in your life, right? That changed the course of the rest of your life. Because they're really, one way of thinking about it, one of my teachers said it really beautifully. He said, there's two worlds. There's the world outside of you, and there's a world inside your mind, inside your heart. And sometimes the world inside of you completely changes. Even though the world outside looks the same, but you know something inside you has completely changed. And as a result of that, over time, your reality outside also changes. That is a very deep, insightful history that historians cannot capture. If you read history books, they cannot capture it. It's a very personal thing. What Allah does in the Quran is very interesting. He talks about our history, the Muslim history, not just from the, conquest and the major events and the big milestone chapter headings point of view. He talks about our history from a spiritual point of view. He talks about it in a way that no historian could ever talk about. I'll give you an example of that before we get to the ayah I want to talk to you about. So a very famous battle in the history of the Prophet ﷺ is the Battle of Al-Ahzab, the Battle of the Trench. There are multiple tribes that have finally decided that we need to end the problem of Islam, so they form a conglomerate union, and they come all together not to meet the Muslims in the battlefield. They are going to come to Medina to engage in basically genocide. They will kill every man, woman, and child and take all the property because this problem needs to go away. We need to purify the land from these filthy Muslims. That's the idea. And the only thing that kept that genocide from happening, because we were completely outnumbered, was that there was a trench that was dug to not allow the army to make a massive incursion, right? And it was a very last minute trench that was dug. And I won't go into the details of that history, but the military that came for the invasion, they camped right outside the trench, trying to make because they can only now make trickled advances, right? They can't make a massive advance. So they're camped outside, and they're doing what in olden days used to be the siege. Like back in the day, if there's a fort that you're trying to conquer and you're not able to go over the walls, you just lay siege on the fort. They'll eventually run out of food. They'll run out of supplies. They'll start starving to death, and they'll give up. That's what